Welcome to Podnutz Pro, episode number 36. And with this episode, there's some sad news that just got released about 40 minutes ago, and Steve Jobs is no longer with us. So, co-host of the show, of course, is Mr. Matt Rainey, and it doesn't need to be said, but this is big news just for the fact of how important Steve Jobs was to technology. If you're an Apple guy or not, it doesn't really matter. You can't deny the impact that he had on what we do and today. Matt?
Absolutely, yeah. It's not just Apple it's going to affect. It was everything because a lot of the things he pioneered have definitely had far-reaching effects. So definitely a sad day.
Yep, and we all know that he had battles with cancer quite recently, and going back and forth, and he kind of stepped down, and his physical appearance changed, and then he was quite good as kind of disguising what he was going through. It is a personal the matter, but he's no longer with us today. So condolences to his family, and this is definitely felt around the world. So.
Yes, definitely.
All right, man. So I've had another long week this week. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think they're all long. They're all, what, 14 days long? Yeah, they're
Yeah,
pretty long. But hopefully that's what weekends are for. At least for my
exactly.
weekends. I don't usually like to work on the weekend, so work all week, relax on the weekend. That's what they're for.
There you go. So what will we be talking about today, sir?
Well, I know we talked about Small Business Essentials 2011, and
Hmm.
we talked about how to install it. Of course, that's once you install it, you're not done. So just gonna cover the next stage of what you do after you install it, some of the configuring you need to do in the next segment of our SPS 2011 Essentials. And then we got a few other things. We'll cover that first. So basically, we left off at the first time just installing it. Of course, with any server operating system, installing it is usually the easiest part. It's the configuring afterwards that can be tricky. It's gotten easier over time, of course. Windows NT server was terrible after you installed it to set it up, especially with Active Directory. And it got better, and it's better now. So it gets easier. But there's still things you need to do. After you install it, one of the first things you're going to see, and this is true of '03 and later, is the getting started tasks. And it's just a console on the dashboard, they call it, and it shows up as in the home view of getting started tasks. First task, well, let's see, the different tasks that are in there under getting started. It says complete these tasks. You've got get updates, which is just basically turning on Windows updates or Microsoft updates. You want that, if you want it on or off, depending on how you feel about updates being installed automatically. You can do whatever you want. Of course, they're going to recommend that you install these things automatically. You got server backup, set up remote web access, and it says set up options for sharing or set options for sharing, which we'll cover a little bit of those. But those are the getting started tasks that you're going to do.
Okay.
So the first one, not that important, updates for Microsoft products. You can leave it on, you can leave it off. It's standard Windows update stuff. What day or time do you want to do it? This kind of thing. On here, it's also got, do you want to automatically report errors? You get that screen, pops up, send errors. You can say on this screen if you want to just send them automatically or not. That's just a quick screen. You probably won't go to it other than the first time. Server backup, that's something you definitely need to do. You don't need to do it initially, and that's a whole separate topic for backup on SPS Essentials because it does client backup too. So there's a lot of options. So just that's a task that needs to be done, but that's a task for another show.
All right. And then just a quick general. So it does a client backup. I assume it installs an agent on the workstation.
Right, that's true, and that's actually installed with some of the next things we'll get to. Is there's a connector to install on the computers, and that connector is part of that. Um, So yeah, there's an agent on all computers that will do that. One nifty, one nifty connector for everybody.
One nifty connector.
So server backup definitely, but the one I want to talk about right now is the setting up remote access, because one of the nicest things about small business server and even essentials is the remote access features.
Okay.
I've got clients who are on small business server, and when they grow out of it, they kind of miss some of the options that they can't have anymore. So they're nice options to have. So you'll click on the setting up remote access under complete these tasks. And the first thing you're going to get is, of course, the getting started screen, which Microsoft loves to get started, even though you've already clicked the link to do it, which to me would be the getting started. But anyway, you get a getting started link. And with the new Microsoft products for small business server, they like you to have UPnP enabled on your router, and that's a universal plug and play. It tries to configure your router for you. Now, I don't like anybody to configure my router for me. I want to configure my router. But
But you're saying the operating system will try to configure your router?
yes. Right, using UPnP.
Okay.
So it'll go out and try and detect your router and open up the ports it needs to open up. But these ports are only going to be 443 and port 80. And 80 just forwards to 443 normally because it's going to redirect to HTTPS. So there's not that many ports to open up,
Mm-hmm.
but it wants to do it for you because it's trying to make your job easier. Because let's remember who Microsoft thinks is installing this. They think, or their goal is that the office manager or the small business owner or someone who knows very little about computers is the one doing this. Now, that's not true usually, but that's what their goal is. That is what their goal was even for Small Business Server 03 and Small Business Server 08. So it still holds true for the Essentials product in 2011, but it's never the case. So some of these things are trying to build on anyone can do this.
Okay.
But again, we know that's not true, right, Lalo? That's
Yeah. But I mean, I'm just kind of intrigued that it can configure your router. I mean, how does it know that you have a Cisco device or Juniper or Sonic Wall or WatchGuard?
well, that's the thing. It tries to go detect it, and a lot of routers like that aren't going to have that turned on anyway. So
Right.
it'll just fail. And in fact, if on this getting started screen, there's an option for skip router setup, I'll do that myself, basically.
Okay.
Now, if you check that, it's just going to skip it. But if you don't check it and click next, it'll go out and it'll try and do its thing. It'll try to find your router. And if you have a business router or a router with UPnP turned off, you're going to get this message saying, basically, I can't do it. I don't know. Your router's not working or I can't do it. So then at that point, you've got to put, I want to skip this. I know this is a problem, meaning I know you can't do it. You click that box and you click next. If you have a Linksys off the shelf or something, it probably will work, and it'll probably ask you for your login or whatever it's going to do. I've never actually used UPnP, so I can't say for sure what it'll do. But I imagine it would ask for the login for the router and then just make the changes for you. So my recommendation is skip the router setup and then click next.
Gotcha.
You should always know how to configure a router. If you don't know how to configure a router, you need to learn how to configure a router because it's something you need to do.
Step
And
one.
right, before you run the wizard, learn how to use your router. Okay. And UPnP should be off for security reasons, as we said before, because if somebody else is on your network and you leave UPnP enabled, they can get in there and do some stuff that you might not want to happen. So don't leave it on. Okay, so the next screen is going to ask you for a domain name. Do you have a domain name? Now, when you're doing remote access, when you're out of the office, you're going to go to a website, and of course, you need a domain name for that. So something dot, let's say remote dot acme.com, and that's going to take you to this website. So it's asking you, do you have a website,
Thank
or do
you
you have,
for using the domain Acme.
you like that?
Because every Microsoft certification test, you are
I know.
in the Acme domain.
Or conto, or is that Contoso?
Yeah, yeah.
That one. That's what I've seen lately. Yeah. I like to use Podnutz, but they might confuse people. They might try and go to it. So, so whatever the domain name is, so it's going to say, do you have a domain name? There's a couple options. It says, I want to use one that I already own. So if you've already registered acme.com in this wizard, you can say, yes, I already have one. Here's what it is. Or you can say, I want to set up a new domain name. Now, the new domain name is interesting, which I'll get to in a second. But even if you have a domain name, for whatever reason, you may not want to use it for remote access. Because remember, the Essentials product does not have email built into it. So you may be doing something else for email. You may be doing Gmail, or your mail is hosted by Gmail, or you may have something else, but you may not want to tie it necessarily into this. And there's a reason for it, because we'll get to it in a minute. It might be cheaper to say I want a new one, and I'll tell you why. So most likely you're going to have your own, so you can put it in there. Here's my domain name. It's going to want to do things for you. It's going to say, did you register this domain name at one of our partners? If so, let me log in for it and set your records for you. If you've registered at one of the few Microsoft partners, you can do this. And that's okay to let it create DNS records for you.
Okay.
But I've never registered the listing that they have for their partners. I've never heard of most of them. And that's not where I registered my domain names. HostGator is not on there. A lot of them are not on there. So you're probably gonna have to say, I'll manage my own DNS records. And we'll get to that in a minute too. So just, here's my domain name, and I'll take care of it myself. So the reason that you're doing this is if you want to put, let's say, remote.acme.com, in the wizard, you have to put acme.com so the server knows that it's accepting requests for that. So that's all you would do if you want to manage the record yourself and use an existing domain name. Now, if you want to use a new domain name, it's going to take you to the same thing. Here's one of our partners. You can buy the domain name here and let us set up your records for you. And if you want to, that's fine. The prices, I've looked at the prices, they're comparable to other registrars. So you won't be paying, you're not paying extra. I mean, I think the default is, what was the default? Enom Central or something like that? I don't know. I've never heard of it. It's up to you.
Enom Central.
Enom Central, I think was the default. But there's some other ones, and I don't remember any of them. But on here, as another choice, if you don't want to buy one, you're going to get a choice to use a personalized domain name from Microsoft. Now, this is one free, okay, which is nice, but it's not customized. Not customized, it's a third level domain. So sometimes people using the Essentials product are on I'll say it nicely, on a tighter budget. How about that?
Okay.
Is that nice? That's nice.
That's nice.
Okay. Okay. A tighter budget. So they might not want to pay for DNS, because if they go register someone, they need to pay for DNS. They need to pay for.
Give me 1 second, sir, mate. The roommate is walking in here. So Steve can edit this part of the show out. Got dogs, man. Sorry, I got dogs. Have me go check on them. You can talk to for 1 second.
Network engineer, why would you have a software try to attempt to configure access policies? Yeah, I never do. I always do it myself. But they're trying to make things easier for the non-tech person, who they feel is installing this. They need to be more in tune of actually who's installing this. Because if it is an end user,